In the early hours of a typical day, many of us reach for our phones before even fully waking. Notifications light up the screen. A viral clip from an influencer declaring the truth about health, politics, or life itself. A reel that hits just right emotionally, stirring agreement or outrage before we've had time to think it through. We like, share, or comment instinctively, guided more by what we feel in the moment or what we see reinforced in our feed than by careful reasoning. This is the quiet shift modern life has brought. Opinions forming around influencers, algorithms, and the immediate emotional pull of content, rather than the slower work of questioning, examining evidence, and weighing perspectives. We flaunt ourselves as skeptics and free thinkers, yet we eat whatever is fed to us without looking at the ingredients, and I'm not just talking about food. We elevate each other based on monetary success and our alleged academic smarts, yet there seems to be, paradoxically, an epidemic of people who rarely think critically. Many people look at philosophy as something useless for the common folk, something only for old bearded dudes who write books and use long and needlessly complex words. So I'd like to pose you a question. Does philosophy even matter? In this modern environment, philosophy often feels like an unnecessary luxury. We live in an age of abundance. Information floods in instantly. Opinions are packaged as entertainment, and social media feeds are curated to echo what we already lean toward. Algorithms amplify the familiar, creating digital echo chambers where opposing views are rare and dissenting voices are muted or attacked. We judge and move on before we have the chance or will to give an unbiased assessment. Critical thinking, the ability to analyze evidence logically, spot biases, our own included, and form judgments impartially, requires effort, time, and often discomfort. But the average person has no tolerance for effort nor discomfort, and the rush of society takes up all our time. But the platforms reward quick reactions. The dopamine hit from likes, the rush of validation when our view is echoed by thousands, the comfort of belonging to a visible tribe. Over time, this trains us to prioritize how something feels. Outrage that feels righteous, inspiration that feels uplifting, belonging that feels safe. Or what we see, endless reinforcement from like-minded creators, viral trends that seem self-evident, over what we truly think through with patience and scrutiny. Influencers become the new authorities not because of rigorous thought or evidence, but because their content resonates emotionally and spreads virally. We outsource our conclusions to charismatic voices, letting what everyone seems to agree on stand in for personal reflection. This isn't just harmless scrolling. It subtly erodes the habit of independent reasoning. When everything is instant, reflection feels inefficient. When emotion and visibility drive agreement, quiet questioning feels unnecessary. Philosophy, with its demand for sustained attention and discomfort with easy answers, can seem out of place in this world. Yet that friction is exactly why it matters. Philosophy is not about collecting clever ideas, memorizing quotes, or winning arguments. At its core, it's a deliberate practice of seeing reality more clearly and responding to it more thoughtfully. Ancient thinkers like those in the Greek tradition saw philosophy not as academic theory, to transform how we perceive and live in the world. In our distracted age, philosophy insists on slowing down. It asks us to notice when our views are shaped by emotion, repetition, or social pressure rather than reason, and to reclaim the space for genuine inquiry. It's the opposite of passive consumption. It's active, personal engagement with reality. This brings us to the three quiet questions that philosophy has always circled in every tradition and era, no matter the culture or century. First, what is real? Beyond the surface of appearances, the filtered posts, the viral narratives, the curated feeds, what actually exists? Have you considered the evidence of the things you believe? Not just the beliefs of others, but your own as well? Do you actually have a reason for your beliefs? Or do you just believe it because you believe it? This is known as metaphysics, which is crucial to having a coherent worldview. Second, how do we know? What can we trust when information is endless, biased, and algorithmically sorted? In an era of deepfakes, echo chambers, and influencer expertise, this question is urgent. Philosophy trains us in the study of knowledge, helping us distinguish evidence from opinion, fact from feeling, reliable sources from charismatic ones. It doesn't promise certainty, but it equips us to navigate uncertainty with humility and rigor. This is known as epistemology. In simple terms, it's how you know things and what your criteria for knowing things are. Third, how should we live? When freedom is overwhelming and necessity is forgotten, what truly matters for a meaningful existence? This is the ethical heart of philosophy. It asks us to examine our values, our habits, our relationships, not based on trends or what everyone is doing, but on reasoned reflection about the good life. This is the most widely known branch, known as ethics or meta-ethics, if taken to a higher order. These aren't abstract puzzles reserved for lectures. They cut directly into daily life. When an influencer's hot take sparks instant agreement, philosophy gently asks, is this true or just familiar and emotionally satisfying? When outrage spreads unchecked across our feed, it prompts, what evidence supports this? What assumptions am I making? What might I be missing? In an era where we can feel informed without thinking deeply, these questions restore the capacity for independent judgment and protect us from being swept along by the current. Everything seems possible. Endless content, endless opinions, endless ways to spend our attention. So we chase more validation, more stimulation, more certainty from quick sources. But this very abundance can leave us adrift, overwhelmed, and paradoxically empty. We fill every gap with noise, avoiding the silence needed for reflection. Philosophy helps us rediscover what is truly necessary. Not endless input, but intentional focus. Not borrowed certainty from influencers, but self-examination. Not the illusion of knowing through likes and shares, but the quiet work of understanding the world around us. It's a practice of subtraction as much as addition, learning to say no to distractions so we can say yes to depth. Everyone has their own philosophy. Knowing or unknowing, the issue arises when it is shallow, due to not being thought out. You may be an empiricist who believes in what you see and feel, or a nihilist who believes in a lack of meaning. Perhaps a coherentist who believes all truths must be coherent and consistent, or whatever it may be. But rarely does anyone actually think their beliefs through, and thus they fall into a shallow life without the ability to firmly believe anything. A lack of firmness in one's beliefs leads to insecurity and instability. To understand why a coherent philosophy is so vital, consider what happens when populations lack one: a shared framework for meaning, values, and decision-making. Without it, societies often face profound issues: erosion of social cohesion, where trust in institutions and each other breaks down; rise of extremism as people grasp for simplistic ideologies to fill the void; moral decay, leading to corruption, inequality, and self-interested leadership; and an inability to adapt to crises, whether environmental, economic, or political, because there's no unified vision to guide response. History offers sobering examples of societies that faltered or fell due to such ideological or philosophical vacuums. The Western Roman Empire, in its later centuries, saw a gradual loss of their republic virtues and civic philosophy that once unified it, replaced by decadence, corruption, and a fragmented sense of purpose. As leaders abandoned core principles of duty and justice, citizen trust evaporated, economic systems weakened, and the empire became vulnerable to internal strife and external invasions, culminating in its collapse around 476 AD. Similarly, in the Weimar Republic of post-World War I Germany, The absence of a coherent national philosophy amid economic despair and humiliation created an ideological void, allowing extremist movements like Nazism to rise. Even the ancient Maya civilization experienced regional collapses around the 9th century AD, where over-reliance on divine kingship without adaptive philosophical shifts contributed to societal breakdown amid environmental stresses. These cases show that without a guiding philosophy, a guiding ideal, and a communal ideal, societies don't just stagnate, they unravel, often with widespread suffering and long-lasting repercussions. Philosophy isn't required for bare survival. Life goes on without it, as it has for many. We can scroll, react, consume, and function. It reclaims the mind from passive consumption and emotional reactivity, offering tools to see clearly, think independently, and live deliberately. In a world that fills every gap with distraction, philosophy is the practice of making space for what matters. To truly grasp existence, we must move beyond merely living it, beyond the automatic flow of daily experience, the reactions to what appears, or the feelings that arise unbidden. We have to pause and reflect on its very nature, asking what it means for something, anything at all, to be rather than not be. Without this deliberate turn inward and outward, existence remains opaque, reduced to surface appearances, habits, and the pull of immediacy. This is the quiet insight that philosophy has always circled. The simple fact of being is astonishing and mysterious. We encounter things, people, thoughts, and the world itself, yet rarely stop to wonder about the ground that allows any of it to exist in the first place. Existence isn't just a given backdrop. It's the fundamental thatness underlying everything. When we fail to reflect on this, we live in a kind of unexamined drift, accepting the world as it presents itself, shaped by emotions, social currents, or sensory input, without ever probing deeper. Reflection on the nature of being reveals layers we otherwise overlook. The contingency of our own existence. Why this particular life, this moment, rather than none. The distinction between what things are, their qualities, and the sheer fact that they are, and the way our consciousness participates in disclosing reality. Think of how Heidegger described the question of being as the most fundamental, yet most forgotten, because it's so obvious and near that we overlook it, like fish unaware of water. Or how existentialists like Sartre emphasize that human existence precedes any fixed essence. We are thrown into being without a pre-written script, and only by confronting this openness, by thinking about its nature, do we gain the freedom and responsibility to shape what we become. Without this reflective turn, existence stays shallow. We react to what we see and feel, but we don't understand the ground from which those reactions arise. We chase meanings handed to us by culture, influencers, or instinct, rather than discovering what truly sustains or defines our being. Philosophy at its best invites us to linger here, in wonder at the fact of existence itself, and in the disciplined effort to see its nature clearly. Only then does life move from mere occurrence to something lived with awareness, depth, and perhaps even quiet reverence. In the end, the question isn't whether philosophy is necessary in some grand, universal sense. It's whether we are willing to make room for it. Try one small act. 10 minutes of unplugged reflection each day, questioning a belief you've taken on faith from a feed or feeling. See what shifts. You might find that philosophy, far from being pointless, is the quiet anchor we need most. So I'll ask you this. Can you spare 5 minutes to question your own beliefs? If not, perhaps you should give your opinions more thought beyond short-term feelings. This video is more of an introduction to the basics of philosophy and the tip of the iceberg on why it's necessary. And with that, I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.